How Nokia lost everything. In 2007, one company sold 435 million phones. They controlled 40% of the entire global mobile market. Their brand value, 110 billion euros. 6 years later, market share, 3%. Brand value, slashed by 95%. 30,000 employees, gone. This is the story of how the world's most dominant phone company didn't just lose, they completely vanished. And the most chilling part? Their CEO admitted, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." Act 1. The Empire. Let's rewind to 2007. If you had a cell phone back then, chances are it was a Nokia. Nokia wasn't just a phone company, they were the phone company. That year alone, they shipped 435 million devices worldwide. To put that in perspective, they sold more phones than Motorola, Samsung, and Sony Ericsson combined. In the fourth quarter of 2007, Nokia reached what they had been chasing for years, a 40% market share. 40%. That means 2 out of every 5 phones sold on planet Earth had that Nokia logo on the back. They were a source of national pride for Finland. Their profits? 7.2 billion euros that year. The Nokia N95, their flagship smartphone, had won awards as the best mobile imaging device in Europe. People loved these phones. And Nokia's engineers? They were brilliant. They knew smartphones were coming. They had the Symbian operating system. They had the technology, the resources, the market dominance. They had everything. And then, on January 9th, 2007, everything changed. Act 2. The Earthquake. Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and said 7 words that would reshape the entire industry. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. The iPhone. A device with no physical keyboard, just a touchscreen. No stylus, just your finger. It combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator into one sleek device. Now here's the thing. When the iPhone launched in June 2007, Nokia didn't panic. Why would they? The iPhone was expensive, $499 for just 4 gigabytes. It didn't even have 3G. It was exclusive to one carrier in the US. From Nokia's perspective in Finland, this was just another phone. Maybe a nice phone, sure. But their N95 had a better camera, more features, and sold in every market worldwide. But what Nokia didn't see, what they couldn't see from inside their success, was that Apple wasn't just selling a phone. They were selling an ecosystem, an experience, a complete reimagining of what a phone could be. By 2008, the first Android phone hit the market. Now Nokia was facing 2 enemies, not 1. And still, they held strong. In 2008, their total mobile phone market share actually peaked at 38.6%. But if you looked closer at the smartphone market, not just regular phones, the cracks were already forming. Their smartphone share was dropping, quarter by quarter, month by month. And inside Nokia's headquarters, people were starting to panic. Act 3. The Burning Platform. By 2011, Nokia was in free fall. In just 3 years, their smartphone market share had plummeted from nearly 50% to under 30%. They were hemorrhaging customers to iPhone and Android devices. Their board made a desperate move. They hired Stephen Elop, a Canadian executive from Microsoft, as their first ever non-Finnish CEO. Maybe an outsider could see what they couldn't. On February 8, 2011, Elop sent an internal memo to Nokia employees. It wasn't meant for the public, but it leaked, and it became one of the most famous and brutal corporate memos in history. It was called The Burning Platform. Elop opened with a story. A man working on an oil rig in the North Sea. Middle of the night, explosion. Flames everywhere. The man makes it to the edge of the platform and looks down. 30 meters below him, dark, freezing water. He has 2 choices. Stay on the burning platform and die in the flames, or jump into the icy ocean. He jumped. Elop wrote, "We are standing on a burning platform." He didn't hold back. He tore into Nokia's failures with surgical precision. The first iPhone shipped in 2007, and we still don't have a product that is close to their experience. Android came on the scene just over 2 years ago, and this week they took our leadership position in smartphone volumes. Unbelievable. But here's where it got really dark. Elop didn't just blame competitors. He blamed Nokia itself. "We poured gasoline on our own burning platform. We have lacked accountability and leadership. We had a series of misses. We haven't been delivering innovation fast enough." He called out Nokia's own operating systems. Symbian, their main smartphone OS, was increasingly difficult to develop for and non-competitive in leading markets like North America. MeeGo, their next-generation system they'd spent years developing. At this rate, by the end of 2011, we might have only one MeeGo product in the market. 1. product. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturers were cranking out devices much faster than the time it takes us to polish a PowerPoint presentation. The memo was honest, brutally honest, maybe too honest. Nokia's chairman later called it an act of misjudgment. Employees were demoralized. The stock price tanked. But Elop had a plan. On February 11th, just 3 days after the memo leaked, he announced Nokia's bold new strategy. They would abandon Symbian. They would abandon MeeGo, all those years of development gone. And they would go all in on Windows Phone, Microsoft's mobile operating system. Nokia was jumping off the burning platform. The question was, into what? Act 4. The wrong lifeboat. At first, the partnership looked promising. Nokia released the Lumia line, beautiful phones running Windows Phone software. The Lumia 920 with its incredible camera. The Lumia 1020 with its insane 41-megapixel sensor. These were genuinely impressive devices. But there was one massive problem. Developers didn't care. The iPhone had the App Store. Android had Google Play. Both had millions of apps. Windows Phone? At its peak, it had maybe 3.7% of the smartphone market. Why would developers spend time and money building apps for a platform almost nobody used? And consumers wouldn't buy Windows phones because they didn't have the apps they wanted. It was a death spiral, a catch-22 with no escape. The numbers were brutal. In Q2 2007, Nokia's smartphone market share was 50.8%. By Q2 2013, just 3.1%. 3.1%. They had lost everything. In September 2013, Microsoft made their move. They announced they would acquire Nokia's entire phone business for $7.2 billion. Stephen Elop would return to Microsoft. Nokia as a phone company would cease to exist. But here's the twist that makes this story even more tragic. Some analysts looked at Elop's contract after the deal closed. It turned out he had financial incentives tied to selling the company. He would personally make $25.4 million from the Microsoft acquisition. Nokia's chairman had to apologize when this came out. Had Elop been a Trojan horse, a Microsoft employee planted to destroy Nokia from within and deliver it to his former employer? Many Finns believed it. They called it the Elop effect. The theory is probably not true, but the fact that people believed it shows how devastating the whole situation was. And Microsoft? By 2015, under new CEO Satya Nadella, they took a $7.6 billion write-off on the Nokia acquisition. They laid off 7,800 employees, most of them former Nokia workers. Microsoft eventually sold the remains to a Finnish company for just $350 million. Nokia had been worth 110 billion euros. It was sold for parts for less than $500 million. Conclusion. Today, Nokia still exists, but not as a phone company. They pivoted to network infrastructure, 5G equipment, telecommunications hardware. They're actually doing okay in that space. But the Nokia we knew? The Nokia that defined an entire generation of mobile phones? That's gone. So what happened? How did the most dominant company in mobile lose everything in just 6 years? They were too slow. When Apple released the iPhone, Nokia took 4 years to respond with anything comparable. In technology, 4 years might as well be 4 decades. They were too arrogant. They dismissed the iPhone as too expensive, the touchscreen as a gimmick. They believed their engineering prowess and market share made them invincible. And most critically, they jumped from one burning platform onto another. Windows Phone was never going to save them. By 2011, the smartphone war was already over. iOS and Android had won. Nokia just hadn't accepted it yet. Remember what Stephen Elop said at the end? We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. But they did do something wrong. They did everything wrong. They were just too deep inside their own success to see it. Nokia's story is a reminder that in technology, dominance doesn't protect you. Success doesn't make you safe. If you stop innovating, if you dismiss the competition, if you cling to what worked yesterday instead of building for tomorrow, the platform will keep burning. And eventually, there's nowhere left to jump.